Today is January 13th, 2025. This is the committee meeting with the Streets and Sidewalks Committee. To my left is Councilwoman Susan Westfall, and Councilman Jeff Schilling is absent this evening, and I am Bob Phillips, the chair. We're here to hear a staff report regarding authorizing a feasibility study for the intersection of West Main Street, which is State Route 41, and Experiment Farm Road, Stanfield Road Improvement Project, number 121678. Mr. Titterington.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know everybody had thought that the big decision about what was going to go out at the long-awaited, much-anticipated improvement to the intersection of Experiment / South Stanfield West Main Street project, whether it was going to be a roundabout or a standard intersection. And up to this point, we had been, in 2021, I believe it was, our design engineer made the recommendation that it would be a roundabout. The council passed legislation to formally submit to ODOT for federal funds, grant funds to support a roundabout project. In the meantime, and ODOT, because it is a state highway and there are federal funds involved, they are the active participants in the final decision on the design and the construction of that intersection. To that point, ODOT had been in agreement with the consultant's conclusions based on all the data, based on the design, the renderings, as well as the simulations that they had done. And they still may be, but in the meantime, since 2021, ODOT standards, I believe they were driven, no pun intended, by federal standards, U.S. DOT standards regarding, I know there's an official term, I apologize, but basically mega roundabouts where you have two through lanes within the roundabout, a much more complex roundabout, that they are requiring us to do some further study. And so American Structurepoint, who had done the original design, we've asked them to provide us an amendment to the contract that we have with them to do that study to ODOT standards so that ODOT can relook at that and either confirm or change their decision on what is the best configuration for that intersection. And so we are asking for a recommendation to amend the contract at a cost not to exceed $120,000 to do that. And I don't believe we are asking for emergency legislation.
No.
Right?
That's correct.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So we had already budgeted $500,000 for the design of this project?
We have, yes.
And that does not include the $120,000?
It does not, but we will see what happens with the $120,000 or the new assessment, which will then take some time to go through ODOT's review process.
Is that the OATS manual that you're talking about, the simulation and all of that stuff?
That was through American Structurepoint.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So it'll be towards the end of the year, we'd expect, before we got that data and that analysis. And if we have to revisit that, then it might fold into 2026, or we would look at a reappropriation, because we really won't have any kind of final cost estimate on detailed design, of course, until we figure out what we're going to do, and then we'll have to bid that out separate from the design work that's been done to date.
So ODOT is not buying into the roundabout design-ish or bent at this moment without that study, or this Correct. Is in addition to?
Well, it's they're not taking a position either way, but they're saying that, the standards have changed, the analysis requirements, they want some new data. They want to look at all of that based on their new modeling, again, to either reaffirm the roundabout idea or instead go to a standard intersection.
But we're being required to do this regardless.
We are.
Okay.
And there are federal funds involved, and so that's where they control
Correct.
our destiny.
Okay, thank you.
So some of this money is federally, the 120,000 is federal money, or
No, that's
coming
our
out of
money. The
but they're
federal money that's
requiring us.
involved is that we have been awarded approximately $2.5 million towards the eventual construction. So we've been in the long-range plan, we've been in the transportation improvement plan through MVRPC, Miami Valley Regional Planning Organization, and so we are set. I'm not sure what, should have that. It's in the next couple of 28, that we are set to do that construction, or we lose that money.
And what was the $500,000 that was in the budget? What was that scheduled?
That was to begin doing the detailed design based on what we had previously thought would be a roundabout design.
Okay.
And so
And-
as we've been going through the preliminary design work with ODOT, the environmental safety reviews that they do, that's when they said, well, things have changed at their level and possibly the U.S. level. I can't be sure, and so they want some more information.
What's the expected timeline?
Boy, that's a great question. I want to say it's. Oh, Christy's here. I just got a text her. I thought you guys abandoned me. I thought it was in the 3 to 6 month time.
Yes. So
Introduce yourself just for
Christy
the
Butera, Assistant City Engineer. So we would anticipate American Structurepoint being done in about 3 to 6 months, as Mr. Titterington said. So during that time, we would be having another public meeting with the public. So I would anticipate that in late spring timeframe. And then, as it said, so it's set for, if we keep on target with ODOT's target date for construction, it's set for 2028 construction of whatever improvements happen at that intersection.
But the public still has to say in what happens or not?
As part of the ODOT process, there are public meetings. So you take their feedback,
And do what with it?
factor it into a decision. I mean,
Okay, I'm just curious. I wasn't here when this was decided, so I'm just trying to figure out how this works. Why get the public opinion if you're not going to use it?
No one said that it wasn't going to be used. It's a
Well-
part of the process. It has to be.
Okay,
It's
And
a part of every process
okay.
that we have, and that's something that, I'm glad Christy brought it up, because there is some overlap and some things that we are able to do with this $120,000 project that will overlap with the $500,000 piece that we would eventually do, so that we're not going to have to repeat. So it's not entirely all new. Some of it we'll be able to start doing on the $500,000, but just not nearly as much as otherwise we would have.
Okay.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Any other council folks have any comments or questions on this item?
Todd Sievert, council member at large. I just have some questions because my memory is a little faint, and there's some sentences in here that I'm trying to struggle with. Mr. Tittington, you say in 2021 that we did not pursue safety funding because safety funding, the project did not meet minimum
safety requirements. And then you just told the committee that we were doing this because of safety concerns. So I guess my question is, here's my fundamental question. If you started 2022, we had started Main Street, we closed Main Street because of the building. We now are looking at 2026 of doing the square and closing that down and that roundabout. and now we want to close Main Street again in 2028. And I guess my question is do we lose federal funding if we don't do it by 2028? Is there any way we can put this back 2 years into a 2030 year to give some sort of relief for Main Street traffic? If it's not a safety issue, I guess I'm concerned as to what the rationale behind doing it in this timeline, which in 2021, nobody knew we were going to have all these other issues that we've experienced.
Okay, so let me try to unravel that. First of all, the closure of the street really had nothing to do with anything, and it was beyond our control. However, let's keep in mind that State Route 41, which is what this road is our single heaviest traveled road in Troy. From downtown to out past Experiment Farm, I believe it's in the area of a 3-mile stretch. So we are not doing projects stacked right on, on top of each other within a half-mile span. Yes, we would lose $2.5 million worth of grant funds if we don't follow the schedule, unless ODOT is the reason for that and they decide that they want to do that, but then they would have to ask permission of the U.S. Department of Transportation, and those funds are programmed out, probably 10 to 15 years in advance, and they move through the process very slowly but very deliberately, which is why they are set. So there's $2.5 million at risk. We are going to be doing work at the square and the square roundabout. It'll be in 2026. That will be, again, about 3 miles away from where the target area is of this. And so when you talk about relief, I don't know when there's ever a good time to do these. We have the opportunity to do them, and once we're done, then, we'll have our heaviest traveled road improved. Some of it was long overdue, and we had to play catch up, namely the Phase 1, Phase 2 project. But I mean, it has to be done, and we risk $2.5 million if we don't do it on the schedule that was set years ago.
Okay, if it's not a safety issue, why does it have to be done?
Okay, so
because let me just finish up with that. So we would also save $750,000 by not doing it, right? Because that's what we have budgeted. And our cost would probably be greater than the $2.5 million.
We would defer $750,000 because eventually we're going to have to do it. And if we have to wait 2 years to do it, like you're suggesting, then that $750,000 isn't going to be $750,000 anymore. It's going to be probably substantially more than that. As far as the safety, I apologize if I was a little confusing. I don't think I mentioned safety. I mentioned environmental safety, but that was a review, and that is a specific department, a division in the department that looks at every project for ODOT. It does not meet the threshold of eligibility to get safety funds that ODOT controls, meaning that we haven't had an exorbitant number of crashes of any kind of serious nature, including but not limited to deaths. That's one criteria, and that gets you to the top of the list because that's ultimately the first and highest priority that ODOT wants to fix. We don't meet that statistically, which, knock on wood, hopefully we never will. That does not ignore, we cannot ignore the fact that that is a very congested intersection, and it is at capacity. There is no way to change the timing of the lights so that all of the traffic can get through that intersection much more efficiently or any more efficiently. I mean, it's been adjusted 3 or 4 times over the last 3 or 4 years, if not less. And the only way to improve that and to get all of that traffic through will require some kind of improvement, either an expansion of the standard 4-way intersection or creating a roundabout. So safety is one thing, but the congestion mitigation is another major pot of funds that ODOT and USDOT control.
If it's an expansion of the lanes, that would be a traffic device control instead of a roundabout,
it would
correct?
be lane capacity, it would be adding lanes, it would be making the traffic signalization.
But it would be a traffic control device intersection.
Or a series of devices.
Or a series of devices.
If it's a standard intersection improvement, yes.
Okay. And so when ODOT came back and said, hey, we want to reevaluate that, that's still a potential that ODOT comes back and says, we think you need to expand the lanes and not
do a
put in
standard
roundabout.
rather than a roundabout. That is a possibility.
Okay. And so what's before this committee then is to spend $120,000 so ODOT can make that determination whether we're going to expand lanes or put in a roundabout in that area. I guess I'm still just trying to justify, if it's not a safety issue, why we're doing it, but I'll defer to the committee.
Well, I think you have to think of it this way. Virtually every road construction project that a community does is not driven, pardon the pun again, by safety concerns, but it's congestion mitigation. It's that the traffic is at capacity and something needs to be done. It could be adding lanes, it could be improving the stoplights, could be a series of things, and roundabouts are one of those potential solutions.
So being relatively new on council in 2019, when the American Structurepoint first study, did they do, I mean, we have all that data, we have traffic counts from that.
We do.
Which would now be 6 years old.
You're correct.
Okay.
And so the Structurepoint, as part of this 120,000, would gather more data. They would use the new standards and criteria that ODOT wants them to use. They would look at any more information that there might be about these complex roundabouts, the mega roundabouts, as I've called them before, and then we would present that. They would make a recommendation to ODOT again, and ODOT would either confirm or change that.
Then I just have one more question. Then, so since this is
Basically 5 years old, we got the money in 2024, I think, from the federal funds. Do you have any idea what the total project costs are going to be?
Christy, do we have a current estimate? I want to say it was like
I don't remember.
6 or 7 million.
Yes, that sounds about right.
So what would be the funding for the difference? The city?
The city funds, as well as we have been building a fund balance in the tax increment financing fund, because that intersection is part of the TIF district there.
Okay.
You use WC, maybe?
There may be others as well, yeah, that grants that we would pursue.
Okay. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Any other council folks have any questions on this item, comments? Anyone in the public have any comments or questions on this item? Okay. This is not an emergency request, correct?
Correct.
The Experiment Farm Road, the southern leg of that intersection is included in this, is that correct? Down to
Meaning Stanfield?
Stanfield,
Yes.
down to Stanfield.
Right. That will actually constitute phase 3 of the Stanfield project as
It'll
we
complete
move
that new
from Honda
construction.
all the way up, yes.
Okay, got it. And we're not going northbound from Main Street.
No, that is a paving project on Experiment Farm that will coincide with it, but that might be a year earlier, I believe. But that's a simple overlay.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. And what is your?
We don't have a choice, do we?
No, we don't. Okay.
There you go.
It is unanimous with the committee that is present that we proceed as staff is requesting. Any, we have another item.
We do have one more.
Okay. Item 2 is an authorization to bid for the 2025 road paving program. Mr. Titterington?
Sure. This is the annual road paving program. In your report, you have a list of streets. The 2025 budget was approved, earmarking $1.5 million to do this work. We are estimating, as much as we can, the ability to do 12.6 lane miles of repaving work. You see the list, and it's 31 sections of various streets in and around Troy. Those are the lowest rated roads that we have. And that's conditioned upon, there may be some lower rated roads, but because of our other construction that might be going on or some utility work that we're aware of, we obviously don't want to get ahead of those and then rip something up and then have it ripped up again. But aside from that, this is the list that is in most need. If we cannot do all 12.64, then we will start cutting back from the bottom of the list up.
Gotcha. Christy, this might be a odd question. It just popped in my little pea brain. The lane miles that we're doing here, is that kind of an average number, do you know? Or a consistent number that we've done over the last several years?
Well, we've done anywhere from 11 to 15, depending on the bids that we've gotten. I do remember that over the last 5 years. Last year it was down low, a little lower, and we had to cut back a couple of road sections. But in previous years, every once in a while, we'll get good enough bids that we've actually added a couple of road sections in addition to what we told the council.
Well, then that kind of dovetails into my next question of guesstimation on whether we're going to need to bump up the 1.5 next year or anything like that because of cost of. Well,
we already, in the 5-year plan, thanks for answering these questions, by the way. But I know this because in next year's, in the 5-year plan that we presented in November, we always include that as a separate line item, and we did bump it up, and I believe we start that in 2026. Right. So we're anticipating that the cost at 1.5 isn't going to work for very much longer, right. And I think we went to 1.7 or 1.75 just for long-range planning.
Gotcha.
And it's just been the last few years that we went up to 1.5.
Right. Questions?
Just out of curiosity, when you say lane miles, is that a 2-lane road mile, or is it 1/2 considered that?
Is considered 1 lane. So like a northbound, it would be a 1 lane, and then southbound, so that's your double the quantity you're thinking, I guess, if I'm interpreting your question correctly.
So it'd be 6 miles of a 2-lane road that you would.
So a 3 mile, a 3 mile 2-lane road would be 6 lane miles.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from anybody else in the council in the audience? Anybody else in the audience? Please come forward.
Steve Hendrickson at 975 Dickerson. I just want to ask you that if we're going to have a not to exceed of $1.5 million, that we don't exceed it. We had this issue last year, I think, that we came back after all the work was done, and it turned out, we needed more money for the work that was done. So either we're going to have a not to exceed or kind of write it in pencil. So I think something in the contract should say not to exceed. If that's what you want to do, that's fine, but if you're just gonna say about that, put it in pencil.
As Mr. Titterington mentioned, the 1.5 will go the 1.5 distance. However many lane miles off of that 12.64 number that we have.
Oh, I know.
So, as he also has explained to you, the contracts are not written that way. So,
But they could be. You can put a sentence or two in there that says, we're not paying you a penny over $1.5 million.
So that's not the way bid contracts are allowed to work in the state of Ohio with construction. I appreciate your point, and I don't disagree with what you're getting to. All right, and last year was an oddity. It was a one-off. We've not had ever had to do that before, related to the road program. When we bid at unit cost. So, and we bid it with estimates such as this, based on what we know, what we can see at the surface, and what we can see maybe with some core samples. And so there may be some areas of the road where maybe there's a void that we don't know about that takes more fill to get it back up once we, okay. Well, that happens.
I understand that completely.
Well, that's not the fault of the contractor, number one. So we can't say, well, sorry, you had to use 3 times the fill, but we're only going to pay for 1 time.
Yeah, but
Oh,
they're gonna track that week by week, aren't they?
Mr. Hendrickson, that's what I'm getting to. And that is that our engineering tech will be tracking with the contractor, and we'll be reviewing either weekly or more often than weekly the work that they've done, where they've done it, and do physical inspections. And so there will be a great deal of control. And when we get to that point where we're getting close, if we get to that point, then that's where we will cut it off. We won't make them do additional work if they haven't already earned their $1.5 million. That's not how that works. It's a unit cost.
I understand.
It's a matter of us inspecting, us keeping on top of that, and making sure that we don't go through the 1.5.
Is that engineer that's gonna go out and check that, is he checking the dollars also?
Oh,
Or
yes,
just how many
he will,
cubic
yes,
feet?
he will be tracking the quantities based on what's reported by the contractor. He will be physically watching, what's delivered, how things are done, measuring as they go along. So yes, he will be keeping controls throughout the entire project.
So we should not be surprised.
Well, we are hopefully not going to be surprised, and we haven't in 17 out of the last 18 years.
Yeah, well, that's fine.
Okay.
All right.
thank you. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, Mrs. Westphal? Move forward. It is unanimous with the committee that's present to move forward as staff is requesting. Any other items come before the Streets and Sidewalks Committee?
No, sir.
We are adjourned. Thank you all for attending.